I'm Peter Cripwell, CEO of RiskSystem. We're a risk and data provider to many fund mancos. And thank you very much for the time here. First of all, kudos to FundRex for setting this up. It's a fantastic event. And I am looking forward to presenting you today with what we are looking at in terms of the ESG space. It's quite popular at the moment. 2 years ago, we actually first demoed our platform, Raptor, and I'm delighted that today we can sort of revisit where we're at in terms of the development of ESG capabilities. But I think the first thing we need to think about when we're talking about ESG is where is it actually going? And to be honest, I think where it's going is to the past. In other words, at some point in the future, probably quite a long way down the road, ESG is just going to be another part of risk management, part of monitoring, part of fund management, basically. You're going to have basically, your Article 8 is going to be somewhat akin to the UCITS 540 rule. Article 9 probably is going to look like the commodities exclusion rule. And your principal adverse impacts are going to be part of your prospectuses. But we're not there yet. So between that image and the reality, there falls a bit of a shadow. And with ESG, the shadow is data. And also our understanding of data. So what I'm going to try and give you today is sort of a range of ways in which we're looking at to help our clients understand how you actually use, develop, and monitor ESG across a range of fund platforms. This is a typical sort of overview. Important thing about a lot of this stuff is that you have to monitor it. In other words, can't always be green. Every Article 8 fund is not actually an Article 8 fund. Greenwashing is a reality, and the feds are getting more and more upset about the fact that greenwashing happens. So it's up to the fund management community to ensure that this doesn't actually continue. How exactly you do this, there are a range of ways. I'm not going to drone on about our ESGs better than other ESGs. That we all know there's huge differences among different providers. That's just reality. I think once taxonomy comes out, they will naturally converge. So the differences today are not going to be the differences in a year's time. But obviously, article level, we have to worry about that. And then it's really depending on you as the manco, as the manager, what you care about, whether it's business involvement, whether you want your funds to be aligned with the Paris Agreement. A range of metrics, and I'm going to take you through how we look at them at RiskSystem. So firstly, you have to have an overall summary. This is a simulated time history, but I'm afraid get used to the fact that you're going to have to worry about the time history of your ESG commitments. For those who had the sad thing of reading the delegated acts, they're looking for 5 years worth of history. You need to actually get on top of the fact that if you're going to go down the ESG route, you're going to have to get into the data management world. Your funds are going to have ESG scores. As I said, I'm not going to say one's better than the other, they're scores. Is Tesla a good or a bad company from an ESG perspective? Electricity good, lithium bad, governance, so you need to actually think about these things. Well, I'm afraid the article thing is important. This is something that's hard and fast. You need to be able to monitor the article status. And then there are other things. If you're monitoring ESG, you need to that involves monitoring the risk of you falling out of it. ESG stress testing. We had to get used to liquidity reverse stress testing last year. Now we're going to have to get used to ESG stress testing next year. Whether or not you care about the business involvement of your funds. Principal adverse impact, well, SFDR, delegated acts, you're going to be very interested because you're going to have to produce reports on that, which you're going to have to file with the feds. And then obviously there's specifics, carbon alignment, stuff like that. In terms of business involvement, again, you will decide whether or not this is an important thing for your funds, but it's something which you can monitor. Whether or not you have fossil fuels, adult entertainment, how good are the labor standards of your investment companies. But when you're looking at this, you need to actually first, everyone is going to be a 6, an 8, or a 9. You just got to get used. So you're going to have the ability to actually define what you are and how you determine and how you demonstrate the fact that you're monitoring that you are in fact what you say you are. Typically, now there isn't, unhelpfully, there's no particular guidance on how you do it. Popular seems to be what I would call filt and tilt. In other words, you take an in-scope set of assets, you filter out ones which you don't want, and then you tilt your portfolio. Whatever it is, you're going to have to put this down, you're going to have to monitor it. And then there are obviously going to be situations where you're going to have assets that are not in scope. And you, as risk managers or as fund managers, are going to have to be able to monitor what exactly these things are. What you need is a system that will enable you quickly to get to an issue. If you're flagging up amber on this, you need to be able to understand why, and you need to be able to react to that. At the other end, because this relies on sort of, fairly much hand-wavy ESG scores, which we can have long debates about, you can go on to the absolute hard numbers of carbon intensity. We have one client who actually has a specific mandate from their board to reduce the carbon emissions associated with their portfolio on a quarter-to-quarter basis. The reason they're doing this is because they're hard numbers. You know exactly what they are, you know exactly how you get them. It is not so much opinion-based. And when you're doing this, you can then look at what are the actual companies. Unsurprisingly, in this particular sample, airlines are not exactly particularly hot in terms of the actual carbon emissions. But the whole point is that this is a metric for you, you have to be able to monitor it, you have to be able to measure it. And then, obviously, you can then go even deeper dive into the data. And I can't stress enough, this is a data and it's an understanding of data problem at the moment. Years down the road, we'll all be used to this stuff and it won't be a problem. But in all this case, you have, for example, in ESG, you're going to have a range of KPIs. Again, if you're in Article 8, you're going to have to monitor things. How do you monitor them? You can set up yourselves areas where you can actually care about what you're going to do. And this is part of where you need to have a system that's integrated with all of your other parts of risk management. This is not a separate thing. This has got to be part of your overall risk management process. So you have KPIs, you can do this across the E, the S, and the G, and you can have them specifically for different funds. It's how you will attract your investors if you're a fund manager. You will associate your fund with specific areas. But then if you really want to go down into the dirty detail, you can basically have a look at what is all the information. And this is part of the problem with ESG. There is a vast amount of information. So associated with every stock here in this portfolio, you have all of these different KPI, all of these different metrics for which you're going to have different numbers. So you can come up with a range of ways of doing it, or alternatively, you have a vast number of rules, and then you can actually say, fine, what's my scope 3 emission of everything in the portfolio? So it's a data issue. You need to actually be able to understand how you actually get this data, how it integrates with your portfolio, and then what are you going to monitor off the back of it. So we're not there yet, clearly, but this is the direction of travel. And just in case people really didn't want to get involved in this stuff, the ASMA has helpfully decided to make you a report. So if you have insurance people as clients, next month you're going to have to start giving them an European ESG template. You are going to definitely have to give them one by August. And of course, the delegated acts have given us a range of templates which need to be generated on an ongoing basis, based on principal adverse impacts. And I do apologize, I cannot spell principal. We will get it right next time. But what you're going to have to do, everyone, for every fund, is come up with this, which is basically the template. So in other words, this is the delegated acts templates filled out. Everyone is going to have to fill out one of these on an ongoing basis so that they demonstrate to the regulators exactly what's going on. Your GHG, Scope 1, Scope 2, exposure to companies in the fossil fuel sector. This is now, basically. We have the templates, it is coming down the road. You need to have something that generates this stuff. Not saying that the ESG is fully understood, but the regulators are fully prepared to get information from you. Thank you very much.